Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another battle to the death for you today. We have a battle of two budget EDC blades. We have the Ruike P801SF versus the Civivi Baklash. Both of them in that kind of 3.5-inch size range. You're looking at about $30 for the Ruike, $35 if you get the stonewash version of this, versus $42.50 for the Civivi. So both pretty easy on your pocket. Yes, the Civivi percentage-wise costs a lot more, but actual money out of your pocket, not a lot more. So I still think it's a very valid comparison. I also think it's an interesting comparison because the P801 is something that a lot of us YouTubers have raved about since it came out. I don't know, well over a year ago. That it was the best, one of the best budget choices you could make. Now, we often say the same thing about the Baklash. So let's sit down and compare them. It's going to be fun. How does this work? We have 7 categories: design and aesthetics, quality, blade, ergonomics, carry, deployment, and value. And then we're going to add up the scores at the end and pick a winner. But before we get to that, let's do some stats. Everybody loves stats. It'll be fun. I don't know. Maybe you don't, but they're fun for some of us. You have an overall length of 8.25 inches, blade length of 3.5 inches. You have a blade thickness, the blade stock thickness of 0.11 inches, handle thickness of 0.36 inches, and a weight of 4.2 ounces. Now, let's switch to the Baklash, and we'll go through that. Overall length slightly shorter at 8.1 inches. Blade length, again, that same 3.5 inches. Blade stock thickness slightly thicker, 0.12 inches. Handle thickness thicker, definitely at 0.51 inches. And a weight of, I scrolled off my own notes, of 3.9 ounces. So a little bit lighter. Now let's get into the categories. Start putting down some scores. We have first category, design and aesthetics. The Ruike is not inspiring in any way. There's nothing wrong with the way it looks at all, I don't think. I did make a change to this because there was something with the looks of this particular version that I did not care for. This pocket clip used to be blue. I sanded all that off and dremeled it off and all that stuff to get rid of it. And I kept a little bit inside there because there's a little accent. But no, I didn't like the blue pocket clip because this is kind of a gentlemanly sort of knife almost in a lot of ways, except that bright stinking blue clip on there, and I didn't really care for that, so I removed it. But other than that, it's a fine design. Nothing wrong with it. Not particularly inspiring. I like the way that the Baklash looks a lot more. There's just a lot more going on, and I think going on in a good way. Now, some people really hate these blue liners. I'm not a fan of them. I'll admit that. I do wish that if I had like a tumble thing to, stonewash it off or whatever, I probably would. But I'm not gonna. It's not enough. Doesn't bother me enough to put that much effort into a $42.50 knife. But pocket clip's not blue, so that's good. This does come in more colors. This does come in the black. The black wash of this looks much cooler, I will say that. This comes in a green or a tan. The blue liners do not match those versions very well at all, but I just like the overall look of it better. I just think it's a much more interesting design. This is kind of just, your typical standard drop point blade knife, where this has some stuff going on. I like the little logo there. No billboarding on the blade, which is really nice. So I got to give the win on that to the Civivi. Quality-wise, the Ruikes have been pretty darn good. Now, I will say, in fairness to this knife, this is pre-Ruike now, where they do all the newer Ruikes, including some newer P801s I've seen, have like a completely mirror polished blade, which is gorgeous, and they do that on everything. This was before they started doing that. This is a fairly older one, so don't judge it on that. But other than that, even without that, it's still great quality. Nothing wrong with it at all. I've had 0 issues with it, or honestly, I don't think any of my Ruikes. I had one Ruike I didn't like, but I don't think it was for quality issues. Just didn't care for the design. but they do a pretty good job also. But Civivi does just take it that one notch more. You have these really nice screws that they make in-house, which is amazing. Very, very deep screws that are, you just get a really good solid lock with any tool you put on it. They work excellently well. Excellently well. And not an excellently well sentence that was, but yeah, the screws are great is what I'm getting to. The G10 feels really good. There's nothing sharp that shouldn't be sharp. Just a really good overall quality on them that I have to say is slightly better than the rakes, which it should be because it does cost slightly more. So it makes sense. But gotta give the win to the Civivi there also. Blade. This one was tough. My first impression was this is way thinner behind the edge. Looking at 14 thousandths versus about 21 thousandths for the rake, which I just thought, well, I like the Baklash better. And the steel, this is 9CR 13 MOV versus 14C28N. I've had very good experience with this 9CR on the Civivis. Am I prepared to say yet that it's absolutely 100% better than 14C28? I'm not quite there yet, but I think I probably will be, but I'm going to call it even for now, just to kind of hedge my bets. But yeah, this is a much better slicer, but I just like the overall blade shape better on the rake. I just do that classic full flat grind drop point is just, it's great. You get a good robust tip out of it. It slices plenty good enough. 14C28N is good to go, and definitely Rake has a lot of experience with it, and they've all been pretty good. Yeah, gotta give it. I had called it a tie on my scores, but at this last minute, I think I'm gonna say I like the blade on the Rake better, which is kind of a surprise to me because this definitely is slicier for sure, and that's usually more what I care about. But it's just as far as general banging around everyday stuff. Maybe it's because I've been cutting a lot of stuff lately. I've been out in the garage a whole lot, getting ready for winter. Maybe my mind is on a more practical blade, but yeah, I'm going to change my own score at the last minute and give it to the Rake for this one. So I'm going to make my note here so that I don't add them up wrong. As far as the ergonomics go, this I'm not going to change my mind about. The Civivi's great. The Baklash has excellent ergonomics. It has a forward finger choil, really good jimping. Can move your hand around on it a lot more. Where this is a pretty slim handle, it's just stainless steel. It's not particularly, not uncomfortable, but it's not particularly comfortable either. Easy win ergonomically to the Rake all day long, or to the Civivi all day long for that. It definitely ergonomically win to the Civivi. I don't think I need to go into that anymore. Similar story with the carry. Both have deep carry clips. Both are not that far off. This is half an ounce lighter, but not enough to really matter that much. But the Rake is so much slimmer in every dimension in your pocket. The Rake is definitely much, much, much easier to carry. Absolutely. It carries great. It's one of my favorite knives, just to slip in a pocket and forget that it's there. It's not, yeah, like I said, not the lightest thing in the world, but it's not too bad. Now, deployment-wise, this is one that I thought, well, definitely the Civivi's going to win this, because I raved about how great the detent, and everybody has on the Civivis. They're awesome. They're so good. But you know what? I'd forgotten how good the Rake is, too. And it's just as good. I'm going to call it even. They're both running on bearings. They're both on stainless steel bearings. They both have about the same kind of drop shuttiness. Both have excellent detent. I would say maybe the Rake even falls shut a little bit more, but the detent isn't quite as perfect. So, yeah, I got to call it even. It's still, this has a lot of miles on it, so it's very well broken in, where this has a fair amount, but not a lot. And, yeah, I got to call it even. I couldn't possibly pick one. Frame lock versus liner lock, that's your own personal decision. Which one do you prefer? Stainless steel liner lock and stainless steel, or stainless steel frame lock and stainless steel liner lock, both But yeah, I gotta call it even. I couldn't possibly choose one between the other. It's definitely a personal preference whether you want a frame lock or you want a liner lock, and then that chooses that category for you. So I'm gonna call that one a tie. Value. This is also a very tough one. I don't know. I've been thinking about it, going back and forth. My note sheet off here to the side has lots of stuff scribbled in and written down and scribbled off, and I don't. This is more expensive. The Civivi is more expensive, but for that extra, what is it? If you're comparing this version to this version, but let's say this is the Blackwash version, so you're getting the Blackwash version that's $35. So for $7.50 more, you get a nice little pouch on the Civivi. You get US support. If you're comparing those two versions, I would say, yeah, that's the Civivi's a better value. But if you're comparing $30 versus $42.50, like $12.50, are those two things worth it? I don't know. And steel wise, I think long term this is kind of it's not a new steel, but it's one that we're just starting to really experience in the knife world. I think long term, we're going to realize that this is probably much better steel than the 14C28, but I'm not at a point where I can declare that yet. So I'm just going to call it a tie, because I keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And honestly, once we get to the scores, it wouldn't have mattered to who's going to win. The same knife still would have won. So I'm going to cop out on the value thing and say tie. My inkling is this is probably in the long term gonna seem like a better value, but I'm not confident enough to make that declaration yet. So where does that put us? 3-2 win for the Baklash. The 801 is a great freaking knife, though. I've recommended it to lots of people for their first knives. I've bought this for people for their first knives. I actually did purchase one of these for one of my friends last Christmas, and he loves it. And then I got one for my father-in-law too. I forgot about that. I bought one for my father-in-law for his birthday. So I gotta say the Baklash is the future. I said in my initial review of these Civivis is, you know, where do we go from here? The Civivis, especially these 4251s, are so good. It's gonna be tough for anybody remotely close to that price point, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this also, because this is a $12.50 cheaper knife, which is a significant percentage, as I pointed out. But I'd spend the extra $12.50 and get the Baklash. So hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've been Brian. Have a good one.